Small business war stories. Small businesses are the soul of America. And this is where they tell their stories. I am your host, Pablo Fuentes. Hey, lovers of small businesses and good stories in general. Welcome to episode 65 of Small Business War Stories. And today I had the pleasure to sit down with Jason McCarthy, who is the founder and CEO of GoRuck. And GoRuck is a really special company. I've known them for a long time. I own their gear and I've done their events, and I got to know their founder many years ago. And he has done a terrific job at building GoRuck into a company that started out making these really high quality backpacks, really. And then it evolved over time to be a company that is also has these amazing events called the GoRuck Challenge. And we talk about all the different events they have. And he has a mission to build better Americans. And he is really passionate about what he does. He's a former Special Forces operator. And he very much believes in the Special Forces way of life and how it can make everybody's life better. This is a great episode. Lots of little nuggets and wisdom from Jason, and a really cool story as to how GoRuck got started. This episode is brought to you by Proven.com. That's the company I started, and we work with small businesses. We help. We have a great hiring product. You can check it out at Proven.com. It's that helps small businesses hire more efficiently and distribute your job widely and organize all of your applications, organize everything in one place. And we also have a great blog at blog.proven.com that helps small businesses with all different areas of running your small business. So if you have any ideas for us, go ahead and shoot us an email. Send us an email at podcast@proven.com. I personally read all the emails, and I will respond to you and let us know if there's any topics that you want to see covered, any interesting guests that you want to see on the show. We would love to hear from you. Without further ado, let's get to today's episode with Jason McCarthy of GoRuck. And we are live here in beautiful Austin, Texas. And today I have the pleasure and honor to host Jason McCarthy, the founder and CEO of GoRuck. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's cool to have you here. So you're in town here, and you're actually based out of Florida, right?
Jacksonville Beach, Florida.
Yeah,
yes.
Awesome. And you're here in town because you guys at GoRuck are having a big reunion.
Yeah, it's a reunion challenge, so people come in from sort of all over the country and, whoop it on for a few hours and then tie it on. I guess we'd say in a great city. So we do it in different places every year.
Yeah.
And this year it's in Austin.
Okay, awesome. So let's talk a little about GoRuck. You and I met a long time ago. I want to say in 2010.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, when you had just started this company. So you, let's talk a little bit about your background, what inspired you to do this, and then it's gone through a lot of evolutions, and I'd love to hear all the stories.
Yeah, what do they say? The straight line to success or whatever.
Yeah.
It's never straight.
No.
So my background is that I served in Special Forces served in the Army from 2003 to 2008, and as I was getting out, just had this idea for I was living with my wife finally. All right, you want the short story or you want the long story?
Let's do the long story. This is a good,
right.
I want the good story.
All right, so was married for the whole time I was in the Army. And my wife was a diplomat, and I was serving and going through training, and it was a stressful time, right? I mean,
yeah.
Post 9/11, there's just, it seemed like every night there was, a body count of American soldiers who were dying, and it was a really difficult time. And so we were married, and then I eventually got out of the Army to go live with her in West Africa, in Abidjan, Cote d'Ivoire, where she was serving as a political officer for the State Department. And so, expected life to be perfect. And I'd known this girl for a long time, since I was 14 or 15. And we went to high school together and all that stuff. Never dated until right before I joined the Army. It was, oh, I love you, let's get married type stuff, right? Because I couldn't have done that 10 years earlier. Not that I wanted to get married 10 years earlier, but
Sure.
So kind of thought that we were going to skip to the end and everything was going to be all right. And what you find is that you have to put the work in, you have to put the time into anything. And so we hadn't done that. And so very quickly found myself in Abidjan with a marriage that was in the crash and almost the burn stage of its existence. And so, yet there was this idea while I was there to take what I'd learned in special forces and apply it to what she was doing and what other Americans and other diplomats were doing in Abidjan. They love a good coup d'etat in Africa. So the idea was to take a bag, a rucksack, in war, we would call it a go bag, where you have it, go bag or GoRuck. You have it ready, put what you need in the trunk of the Humvee. And if your vehicle gets disabled and you have to fight, then you have extra supplies that you need, bombs and ammo and radios and all whatever you would need, right? If you find yourself, if Murphy strikes. And so it took that kind of special forces mindset, but tactical skills as well, and said, hey, this applies here. I mean, it's not a stable part of the world there. And so it pays to be more ready. And so kind of had that idea, and Emily, we were in the sort of guest room in her house. There was some stuff, some supplies. I was putting it together. And, she's like, well, you should do the GoRuck thing, right? When you come here to stay for good, right? So I'd taken a couple trips and I was going to move there. And so that meant, hey, you should go around and find, other people that would need this skill set, right? I have a special set of skills type stuff.
Sure.
And teach them what it's like, right? Teach them what the special forces preparation mindset way of life. And tactically, just here's a bag, fill it with the things that you need, keep it in your vehicle always, keep a second one in your house always. I mean, and, it's not complete prepper stuff, but a little bit. Prepper is
25% prepper.
Yeah, right. I mean, you don't have to build a bunker underneath, your house that's the size of Atlantis or something, and store stuff for 1,000 people to live for 10 years or anything. It's just, hey, it pays to be a little bit more ready. I mean, and so that was kind of the deal. The problem is what I've always found in life anyway is that if you're personally doing pretty well, you can conquer the world. If you're not, that's when you can try and you're usually kind of going in the wrong direction, or you just don't have your compass. It's just drifting a little bit.
That's an amazing insight, actually. And now that I think back in my life, that's actually really has been true for me as well. So
yeah,
it's basically take care of the house first.
Yeah, and that was a time where the idea for GoRuck was born. So I didn't really want to do GoRuck. That's the dirty little secret, I guess, right? I mean, my goal was to go back and serve in the State Department or one of the other alphabet soup agencies out of Washington, because I felt that I'd served for too short of a time, 5 years. And I got to go to Iraq, and I served in Africa, and I served in Europe and stuff like that. But I felt I was just learning how to do it really well. And I got out for personal reasons, but my goal was to go back in and sort of make it work with my marriage, the personal side.
Sure.
And that just kind of didn't happen. And it didn't happen because of GoRuck, right? And so that's the piece I had to make in those early years. Was the fork in the road is if you're starting a small business, if you're starting anything, it's all or nothing. You have to be religiously committed or it's not going to work. And so I was hedging because I still wanted to go back and serve in the government. So, it was a bit of an art project. Had an idea to fill a bag with things, and that's cool. Didn't really work out. The idea for GoRuck kind of lived on in the sort of bringing the special...
What do you mean by that? So what do you mean it didn't work out?
Well, so, I mean, specifically, I left Abidjan and haven't been back since 2009, right? And, M was there for another year or year-ish, half a year, and then she came back, and, then we're in officially the burn crash, and then the burn.
Yeah,
we're in all of that, right? And so that the idea of, hey, I'm gonna be in an import-export business and get goods over to West Africa and teach people how to fill assault packs or what backpacks even full of supplies that they would need in case of a coup. That did not survive. That died on my plane
So that
flight
was the
home.
original kind of incarnation of you having
Right.
this bag company. Is
Right.
this, go bag in a high danger zone.
Right. And it wasn't really meant to, it was meant to be, I don't do very well when I'm bored, right? I'm insufferable, in fact. So I've always got to keep myself busy. And this was just one of those things where, I was going to go there for a year.
By the way, we'll have to make sure Emily listens to this.
For sure. For sure. Yeah. So if you fast forward, we ended up getting back together. We got divorced and then took a little break, we like to say.
Yep.
And then ended up getting back together and have kids and stuff now. It's life's great. She's a vital part to GoRuck as well. So, that sort of personal lessons that we've learned over the years are, your own house has to be in order. So it comes back to still our house has to be in order. And now it is. We paid for that. We paid for that. So the initial idea just didn't work out. It just wasn't the reality, but loved the name GoRuck. And, looking back now, I mean, Special Forces guys have something to give. They have something
Sure.
to teach and train other people. And a lot of people think that Special Forces specifically means that, you're running and gunning, shooting on the move between your legs and all this wazoo stuff. It's not that at all, really. I mean, it's a mastery of the fundamentals within a very small team. And then that small team goes and you deploy and you link up with foreign fighters and you work by, with, and through those foreign fighters. So you're using them, you're working by, with, and through them to achieve your mission success. Because, look, I mean, in war, that's a sustainable strategy. What's not so sustainable is just keep throwing bodies at the problem, Vietnam, or the way that the Soviets dealt with Afghanistan. That's not how you do it, right? And so the Special Forces way of life, the Special Forces way of problem solving it works. And so, without knowing it, that was my default. I had two things to fall back on. One was the Special Forces way of life, and one was my dog Java.
Yeah.
And I was kind of that guy in a Bad Country song with a broken heart and a dog.
You should write that song.
Yeah. It's take all the saddest country songs and distill them down and make them 10 times sadder. And that's how I felt.
Yeah.
But what did survive was this idea of GoRuck. And I still had no direction in my life. I didn't know what I was going to do or where I was going to go or what the plan was now, because it was just everything was pulled out from underneath me.
So the moment, when did you ended up going to business school? When did you decide to do that? Was it the moment that you left Cote d'Ivoire, or was it after you got back here? How did that happen?
Yeah. So I applied for, I applied for business school when I got back to the States. So that would have been, 2008, I guess, something like that. Late 2008, early 2009, something like that. And I started in 2009, and at Georgetown. So that was a great decision. In sort of, if we wanted to go down the rabbit hole of talking about veteran transition issues and all of that kind of stuff, I mean, PTSD is, everyone hears about all this stuff and what is it like to transition and why is it so hard and stuff like that. And where I was, it was just kind of, I just needed time. I needed time to sort of process what was going on, because you lose your identity, you lose your sort of purpose, you lose your mission.
Yeah. I've heard that a lot from people that I know. My roommate in grad school is one of them, and I have a lot of friends that have served, and like that sense of camaraderie and of purpose is something that makes it tough sometimes to come back, right?
Yeah, you wake up every day in the Army and you know that you're making a difference in the lives of the people right around you. And so, God, family, country, all of that stuff, it's, that you're serving America and God and all of that type stuff, but it's the guy to your left and the guy to your right that's what makes it special. And that's why you can see I'm smiling a little bit right now, because I'm thinking about those guys, right? Yeah. I mean, look, I love America and stuff. It's just those guys were that embodiment of the best of America for me. And on a very personal level, we're human beings. We want to be part of something bigger than ourselves, and we want to do it with other people. And so doing it in a small environment, like on a Special Forces team, was really rewarding.
Yeah.
So the transition, it's always a little tough because you have to work up to that. You have to build that community, no matter what. It's like moving. If you just upped and moved, if you said, hey, I got to move from San Francisco to Austin, or you got to move from Austin to wherever, if you have to move again, right? I mean, you lose a sense of your place, your identity, your belonging, the communities that you've built. And so these feelings that military folks feel, they're universul. I mean, everybody feels them. You graduate from high school, you go to college, you get out of high school, you go work a job wherever, right? I mean, your community becomes the people that are around you. And too often we take that for granted, or we don't develop it enough, or we complain too much and wish for someone else's perfect life on Facebook and stuff like that. It doesn't work like that. You have to invest the time that you have with the people that are around you. And, if you keep finding great people that you love to be around you, that's what I've found makes me really happy.
That's awesome. Wow. That's powerful stuff. I mean, in essence, what I'm hearing is that over the last decade or so, a little bit less than a decade that you've been doing this, you've been able to get, and we'll talk a little bit more about how GoRuck has evolved, but being able to find a feeling that, while may not be exactly the same, is similar and gives you that sense of community. And that's been, the undercurrent of everything you've done with this company.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, the business side of business is not to be downplayed. I mean, you have to keep the lights on. You have to grow. You have to, you have to focus on the fundamentals and do them. But, but what the hell's the point if you don't love it? I mean, if you're just chasing another number, what the hell's the point? Mm-hmm. And so look, I mean, don't mistake this for some sort of, this is just an art project or something at GoRuck. That's not what this is, right? We have really, really significant growth ambitions, and we believe in our way of life and in spreading that way of life to a lot more people. And when you're a business, you can measure pretty easily through, lots of different ways, but revenue growth, participant growth, for us, it's how many miles people are rucking, all sorts of different ways. But it's gotta mean something, and you should be happy doing it. Yeah. And so that's the best part, is that it is that sense of a community, a real community that we have that makes it worth doing. I mean, I'm not really interested in running just a bag company. Right. It's just not for me.
Let's talk about that evolution. That's a great segue to, sort of how this started. So that when I first met you, it was the second Tough Mudder ever, I think, or second. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it might have been the second one ever, which was out in California in the mountains, and it was called not Big Bear, but something
NorCal.
Bear.
It was the NorCal, whatever.
It was something Bear. It was something related to. It's a small ski resort in the Central Sierras, and you were there with a bunch of folks. Basically you had just, I think, graduated recently from business school, and you had...
No, I was still in business school.
You were still in business school?
Yeah, okay. It was like Fight Club every weekend. Yeah. I was taking a flight somewhere to go do some crazy stuff all over the country.
And you had gotten a group of, 20 people to, with you, load up one of your GoRuck bags with bricks and do this Tough Mudder course, which is already interesting and challenging.
And beer. Don't forget about beer.
But it was made much more interesting and challenging by the fact that you're carrying around all this weight.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. So how did that? What were the beginnings of the company? And at the beginning you had one product, right, which is just a GR1.
Yeah. So we actually had 3 bags and a hat, right? Okay. And that was years and years. 3 bags and a hat.
Okay.
And in a lot of ways, I wish we'd kept that lineup for longer and not try to do too much too fast. But yeah, so the original idea of teaching people how to pack a bag and all that stuff, that died, came back, but still loved the idea of GoRuck. And so the art project became GR1, right? How to build this bag, this backpack, this rucksack that would be comfortable and suitable in both Baghdad and New York City. So I was crashing on my buddy's couch in New York, and obviously I'd been to Iraq and Baghdad and that whole universe. So it was kind of a symbol of my life, what I wanted. I wanted this bridge to go from the military world to the civilian world.
Okay.
Subconsciously, almost consciously, I wanted that. I needed that in my life. And it started out with a bag. And so that took 2.5 years almost to get right. Started with an ad in Craigslist, New York City for a backpack designer. And this small team answered in Bozeman, Montana, and corresponded with them for quite a while about, various prototypes and stuff like that. And, then we had to test it and prove it and make sure it wasn't going to fail. And
so how long did it take from the moment you placed that ad on Craigslist until you had a prototype that worked, and then until you had a prototype that is, so how much, I still have it. I've had my GR1 for the better part of a decade. It's my daily bag. And my GR2, which came out later, has been
they actually came out at the same time.
Oh, they came out at the same time?
Yeah, we had the Echo GR1 and GR2 and the TAC hat were the 3 bags in a hat. So
got it.
And that's I really only wanted to do one bag initially.
Okay.
And the product designer said, hey, for business reasons, you should probably have multiple sizes or something. I guess that's good advice. I'm kind of the mindset now that if all a place has is one thing, they're going to do it really well.
Yeah.
In 3 things or 4 things, okay, I'll buy it. That if you buy their story, then they'll do it really well. But when you go to a restaurant and the menu is 500 pages long,
yeah,
it's none of it's good. None of it. It's sort of, you have to have high turnover in restaurants of food to stay fresh, and it's like, oh, we do everything. We do cheeseburgers and we do sushi. It's like, oh gosh, come on. That you sound like a grocery store, So do something, do less, and do it really, really well, and let that sort of go. Let that be the thing that you just keep talking about over and over and over. And when you're sick of talking about it, talk about it more for like the next, year or two, and keep talking about it more and more and more.
Yeah.
And I have to remind myself to eat my own medicine like that sometimes, because new shiny stuff is always kind of fun.
Yep. I
the
call
fundamentals,
it the shiny penny syndrome.
Yeah, it's out there, right? And it's just the fundamentals are what exactly do you do, and do that really, really well, and that's great.
Yeah, that's great. So how long was it between the time you placed that ad on Craigslist to having the fully functioning, I guess, in the market, GR1, GR2? And
I officially started the company in early 2008. I was still in Special Forces.
Yeah.
And, I think went through a designer or two, some sketch artists, basically, that I didn't understand that a quote designer needs to actually be a builder. Right? You need to actually have a studio with a bunch of sewing machines, and you need to actually be able to build it, not just, hey, I'm going to draw this. And, anyway, I was completely naive. And so, I think I probably placed the New York City ad in 2009 after some other people had failed. And then that was, a year and a half later.
Right. Because that's exactly when I met you. I met you in the spring of 2010.
Right. So May 2nd, 2010 was the first Tough Mudder, and we had a partnership with them back in the day. So we went to that first Tough Mudder, and I remember
that was in Pennsylvania, right?
Yeah, it was in Allentown, Pennsylvania. Yeah. And I was at my condo in DC, and our first initial run of all of our rucks showed up, and just the big cardboard boxes, probably 10 or so rucks in a box. And we did some QC checks, quality control checks, and I think 95% of them failed.
Oof.
So we had to send them all back. Said fix them. I think I like to use, how to say this correctly. I like to use colorful language that people will remember.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't just mean
you curse. You cuss on this podcast.
I don't
so
just
what
mean.
Did you say?
No, I don't. It wasn't cuss words. It was. I told the vendor that my buddies would be taking our gear to war. She knew this was very clear. And that if I had sent one of these bags with them to war, that they would find themselves on a mountain in Afghanistan and they would have died because of her. So I'm the stopgap here, and I'll own the fix, which is you're going to fix these, and we're going to hand check every single bag that gets built. But
what kind of issues did they have?
The shoulder straps were coming undone.
Oh, that's a
I
problem.
mean, it's the single most important thing because look, I mean, you get a little stitch line here, a stitch line there, an extra thread. I mean,
Yeah.
okay, got it. We're making gear and art. We want it to be beautiful and it should be perfect and all that stuff. But there's also, 4 hours build time to build these things. It's, a little millimeter here or there is fine. But when the shoulder straps are coming out, you can't, that's just not okay. So we would put our boot in between the straps and pull up on the straps. And if they don't, there's special techniques that they do. They have to sew it and then they back tack it, and it's a whole process, right? If you can't tell, I'm not much of a sewer, but
I didn't know that.
But I've seen it done, right? It's not just one stitch line. They have to sort of reinforce it multiple times. I mean, because that's how it gets 400 pounds worth of strength testing is that you have.
And it holds up. I mean, I've had my GR1 for 7 years now, and I've beaten the crap out of it. And
it looks brand new.
Yeah.
Still got that cool patch that's on your Huckleberry. It's great. So anyway, that it's the unforgivable in this. And so we sent them all back. Some of them passed. And so basically, what happens is you have multiple lines of sewers, and one line did it okay, the 5% we accepted, and the others didn't. And so, you have to catch that stuff. But we went to Tough Mudder, and we had our that was May 2nd, 2010. That was the first time our stuff was for sale. I don't even think we did not even have a website up where someone could order it, but we did have
selling them out of the back of a truck.
Yeah,
basically.
selling them out of the back of a truck. And then we had a website up, and I used to all the orders would come through to my cell phone, and I'd kind of flag them. And because I was in DC, I would get some orders through DC, and to save on shipping, I'd bike them to their house or something. I mean, and then try to meet them and kind of, hey, how'd you find out about us and stuff like that. And I don't think there's any way that I think to compromise that process is to do yourself a bit of an injustice, right? If you try to just be too sleek and perfect, at least that's not how I was going to do this.
Okay.
So
cool.
it was a lot of hustle.
Yeah, sounds like it. And then originally, so the company evolved, and you and I talked about this the last time we got together and chatted. I think it was a couple years ago now.
Yeah, in San Fran.
Yeah, and you mentioned that at one point the events were a way to sell the bags initially and to test, to kind of show what the bags could do, right? And we'll talk a little bit about, we haven't even touched upon what a GoRuck challenge is, which was the first event that you had. And then obviously there's been, actually not obviously, but there has been a lot of other offshoot events. But that's evolved over time. So let's talk about the challenge. How did the challenge come about, and where did that start? What is a challenge?
Yeah, so the GoRuck challenge came about pretty quickly in our lifespan because, necessity is the mother of invention, or however it goes, right? And so I had all of these bags, these boxes of bags that got repaired and fixed and were good to go. And, that was everything. It's every dollar I had and then some. And nobody wanted to buy them. So there's a difference in the process between, hey, I've done this great thing, and then convincing people that you've done this great thing, or communicating rather that you've done this great thing. And it's a value proposition. You say, hey, this is what it is. Let me tell you about it. Would you like to buy it? Yes or no? I mean, it doesn't have to be more complicated than that,
Yeah.
But
when you've invested your time, your soul, and like your entire future, your identity, like you were saying, you were coming off of you were in a tough period in your life where you were crafting your new identity. It's as simple as that is. It's much more complex, right?
Oh, it feels really complex, right? You feel like you just don't even know where to start, really. And so the part, I didn't really have a plan at all for how we were gonna kind of get the word out. And so quickly found out that nobody really wanted to buy these because they're, GR1 costs $295. It still costs $295, by the way, almost a decade later. It's probably going to change pretty soon. But nobody wanted to buy them. I mean, which now, looking back, I completely understand. First off, nobody knew about us. So that's a really good way to get nobody to buy.
Right.
And second off, we're an unproven brand with, it's an okay story, right? Yeah. At least how we told it back then. I was a little less forthcoming with the story back then because I still had the goals to go back and serve in the government. I was very much still hedging. But special forces, made in America, stuff like that.
And you were also charging about 3 times what a person would have paid for a backpack before that, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's another barrier when you're not a known quantity or known brand.
Yeah, and price matters and all that stuff. But I mean, ultimately, someone taught me this years later. I mean, there's Air Jordans in the ghetto.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, people have disposable income to buy the things that they want to buy. You just have to communicate what the value statement is. And so, for me, I don't know anything about Facebook ads or Google Foo. Google Foo score was 0 for me back then. But what I did know was the Special Forces way of life and training and rucking and team building. I mean, that stuff was second nature to me. And I was really close to it, having just gotten out of the Army. So it was, it just, the timing clicked to say, hey, we'll do this GoRuck challenge where you get, I don't know, 20, 30 people to show up, and you'll have a Special Forces guy build your class into a team. So we started doing that. The first class was in San Francisco, September 25th, 2010. So between May 2nd and September 25th, there were very few sales.
Oh, so we must have then met in the fall of that year, okay? Because I met you right after that. Because I was right. You did that class literally the day before the Tough Mudder or something like that.
The weekend before.
The week before, yeah.
Right. And so did that, and I thought it was a good way to sort of take pictures of the gear in use and, show the people abusing it, and then say, hey, the gear's great, it holds up, And what I did not foresee was that the impact that would have on people's lives. When you take them and you're just kind of nice about it, and you have your technique for team building, but you're uncompromising in your standards, and you say, this is going to be really hard, and you're going to do it.
Yeah.
This is going to be really hard.
Real bad.
It's going to suck real bad.
Yeah.
Not because I need this in my life as a cadre, a Special Forces cadre, but because you need this.
And a cadre is a person who leads people.
Right. It's like a military instructor, right?
Okay.
So same word that you would use in the military. It's, teacher, trainer, stuff like that. And so, it's not some sort of boot camp where, hey, I'm just going to beat you down just for my own sake. I've got better things to do with my life than that, be more positive, inspirational, all that stuff. But there is a time and a place where you've got to get people to toe the line, and then you've got to demand more of them than they thought possible. And that's the magic of the GoRuck challenge is that, there's no obstacle course. There's nothing. It's purely the human terrain.
How would you describe a GoRuck challenge in a couple sentences?
So in a couple sentences, our original event is the GoRuck Tough Challenge, and it's 15 to 20 miles, 12 or so hours, and you have a rucksack on, go figure, with 20 or 30 pounds in your ruck, and you get a series of missions throughout the course of the event. It's all led by a Special Forces guy, right? So SEALs, Rangers, Green Berets, Delta, take your pick, right? I mean, these guys are the guys leading the events.
Yeah. And what your motto is? What is it? Under promise, over deliver. Because I was class 36, and I remember back then you guys would say 8 to 10 hours, but it ended up being, I don't know, a lot
18
more than that.
or something.
Well, I don't think it was quite 18, but this is Lou's first challenge.
Yeah. So we did. I mean, and by the end of the event, that takes me back. Yeah. By the end of the event, people are ready to be done, right? Because you've pushed them really hard. And
I was borderline hallucinating. I was definitely being like,
perfect, right? And so at the end, I would always tell the classes, look, under promise, over deliver, right? I mean, you paid for this. You paid really good money for this. I'm going to give you more.
Yeah,
more. Yeah, you're going to get more for your dollar here, you know? And so and they just look at me and sort of shake their head and but keep going. And so the feeling at the end of the events it's great. It's one of those highs in life that you just can't buy it. And that's where it's similar to doing hard things with hard people in Special Forces. It's just that way of life. And human beings are so dominant in the food chain, and with that dominance has come this idea that everything should be easier.
A lot of comfort,
right? Everything is how comfortable can I make myself? If you wanted to, you could literally never leave your house.
Yeah.
I mean, you have plumbing, and you have Uber Eats, and you have, someone can bring you groceries, and you're good. You know, you
Yeah.
can sit here and veg out on your couch for your entire life. Now, we reject the notion that that's a life worth leading.
We call it good living, right?
Yeah. I mean, the comfort is the enemy. Not all of the time, right? I mean, you know, I don't want to see that track wheel of death on my cell phone any more than anybody else does if I'm trying to load a message or something, right? And so it's like, damn, come on, hurry up, let's go, right? And yet, you know, think about what it's taken us to get to the point where we have the whole world literally at our fingertips. And yet what we cannot get away from as human beings is that we yearn to be part of something bigger than ourselves. We're tribal in nature. We're hunter-gatherers that formed communities, that fortified those communities, and then grew and grew as a civilization that way. And we still yearn to do that. And to do that work, it's hard. You have to do it. And the human body has evolved to put us in this state where we're able to do that kind of work together. And now with everything being iPhones and iFurniture and iWrapped everything, and everything is sort of catering to everyone, we as human beings reject it, even when we don't realize that we're rejecting it. It makes us unhappy to try to scroll on someone's Facebook feed and wonder why their life is so perfect and ours isn't. And the truth is that nobody's life is perfect. It's all messy. And that's why it's beautiful though, because it doesn't last forever and because it's messy.
Yeah.
And in there's a lot of grit, you know, and the grit's the good stuff.
There you go.
So you got to get out and do that. And it's getting harder and harder for people to want to do that, because we're just sort of moving the sticks, we're moving the chains towards comfort. So anything that's not comfortable feels too hard. And yet it's going to ebb and flow. And I think that, you know, the more that we're able to just remind people through various methods that this is a great thing to get outside and go put some miles on, go do something really strenuous, find a big challenge and train for it and go do it. I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have a theory actually that we're going to have as a society and as a species, a little bit of a reversion to more of that. The more like there's going to be like a pendulum swinging to like extreme comfort. I don't even have a television, and I love the kind of human connection aspect of it, and I also strive to, you know, push myself in the ways that you're talking about. And I don't think I'm alone. I think a lot of people do, but it is a minority of people. I don't think it's over 50% of people who are seeking discomfort on a regular basis.
You think who are seeking what?
Discomfort.
Discomfort? I mean,
as a means for growth.
Yeah. So, but there's other ways that this surfaces. You know, why do people go sit at a coffee shop? You know,
right.
Surrounded by strangers. Why would you go do that? Why do people, I mean, shopping is the new sort of hobby and stuff. Why would you go to a mall? Is it so that you can actually touch the clothing? Okay, maybe. Or is it because you yearn to sort of be around something that's social? Right. You know, that's the bigger part, is this desire to be a part of a community and to be a social creature. And so that surfaces a lot of different ways. Right. And we at GoRuck espouse the way of life that also involves doing things that are physically challenging.
So beyond the original challenge, which was, what did you call it? 8 to 10 hours? I've never heard of it.
It's about 12 hours, typically.
Yeah. And
I think we say 10 to 12 now. We've gotten a little more realistic.
Okay. And you evolved a few offshoot events. So I went to the original Ascent, which was, we did 100 hours and a bunch of 14ers in Colorado.
Yeah.
And then the GoRuck, did the heavy come before or the light come
The heavy
before?
came... I think the heavy came first and then the light, but I can't remember.
Yeah, so you basically added, like, on either end of a challenge, you added a slightly short. It's not easier, quote unquote. It's just less time.
Yeah, I mean the light is 5 to 6 hours.
Right.
I mean, you still have a rucksack on. You still do some miles. You still do a lot of PT or physical training. You know, things like push-ups and stuff like that. And then the heavy is 24 plus hours, so it's a lot more. Yeah. It's a lot more.
And I remember you telling me at some point, I don't know when, if it was a couple years ago or before that it continually surprised you how much more people wanted or could take of this than you initially thought. Because the first class you did in San Francisco, I think you said it was like 5 hours or 6 hours, something like that.
It was probably 6.
Yeah, 6
I think
hours.
it's probably about 6 or 7 hours.
And then you're like, well, there's no way that people are going to want that. And now you're doing events. We haven't even gotten to what selection is, but now you're doing like heavies are well-attended events.
They're thousands and thousands of people a year.
Yeah, and that's people who are willing to take this like pretty intense amount of pain and challenge for 24 hours straight. Imagine like, it starts at 9 a.m. and you don't stop until 9 a.m., 10 a.m. the next day.
Yeah. Yeah, we did find the point that people don't want. You did. Though. It's called GoRuck Selection.
That's selection.
It's based on Special Forces assessment and selection. Our pass rate's about 2%.
Okay.
And this is the only event we run that's not sort of team-based. And
this is just kick your ass.
This is just, it's just terrible.
Your favorite line is, you should not sign up.
Do not sign up for this one.
Yeah.
The other ones, it's sort of, just figure it out. Just show up. They'll be awesome. Yeah. The GoRuck Challenge. It's going to hurt and it's going to be worth it.
Yeah.
Selection is just a different beast. It's very negative. It's a very kind of...
But it's almost amongst the GoRuck community, it has this like mythical sort of
status. And now we've started sort of streaming it on Facebook Live a little bit, and hundreds of thousands of people viewed it. It's crazy.
So what is selection? So we kind of covered what. So we have the challenge, and then we have the light, which is a slightly shorter version, and the heavy, which is a double version. But selection is not a triple version of a challenge.
No. So at our core, what we do is we take the Special Forces way of life, and we make things out of that, right? So events or gear or you name it. And selection is based upon the gateway to get into Special Forces. It's not meant to be, it's not really the part where you get trained. It's not the part where they're trying to prepare you. They're trying to weed people out. Right. And so the point is that to be a great teammate, you first have to be a great individual. And there's an assessment and a selection part of that process, which is, do you have the intestinal fortitude? Do you have the discipline to train enough to prepare for the event? Stuff like that. And then there's just a certain kind of person that, it's usually the pretty stupid people like me that they're stubborn and refuse to quit, right?
Yep.
Because that's all you got at some point. Everything is taken away from you.
Yeah.
And you've got to find it within yourself.
And you go from an environment where people are trying to help you, because cadre in a challenge, at least in my experience, while asking you to do things that were very difficult, they're also on your side to some extent. They were
very
both,
much so.
At selection, cadre are not on your side.
No, so the first 5 or 6 hours of selection is administrative. So there's a PT test, push-ups and sit-ups, and a 5-mile run and a 12-mile ruck, and there's time standards or repetition standards. And if you don't make those, then you don't continue. You're done.
6 hours worth of PT is just the administrative.
That's the administrative portion. Yeah. So then you've got the loudest thing that GoRuck does is the welcome party at selection. Yeah. It's loud, it's intense, it's very unforgiving. When you step back and you're a cadre, it's very different than being in it as a participant, of course, because when you're in it as a participant, you think you're working really hard, and that you just don't you lack a lot of situational awareness. You can't see what everybody else is doing. As a cadre, you can tell very easily who's doing well and who's not. And so you basically focus on the ones who are not doing well, and you isolate them, and you remove them from any type of, you give them lots of special attention until they quit. And
special attention means more requirements, more
but it's
work.
Also the mental side. You basically are telling them, hey, the reason I'm here is because you're not meeting the standard. Mm-hmm. So you're going to have to start meeting the standard. I'm watching you, right? And when people start self-selecting, they start to believe what you're telling them. I'm not meeting the standard, so I might as well just quit now, right? You start saying things like, we're 6-7 hours into this. You have 41 more hours of this. Of course, it's not all like this, but you don't tell them that.
Yeah.
And do you think you're possibly going to be able to do that? You keep reminding someone how far it is, because when life gets really, really, really bad, the best thing you can do is focus on the immediate.
Just
right?
The next step.
Do not start trying to plan your whole life when I was at rock bottom,
Yeah.
No, I was that Bad Country song. The worst moments are when you start thinking about all the things you won't have in 30 or 40 years, and your life's miserable, and it's always going to be like this.
They just happened to me in the last few months. I had 3 major things go wrong with my life in a period of about 6 weeks. And the moment you start thinking about the next 6 months, it's almost like you choke up. And then the moment you focus on the next step, you have a shot.
A week can be hard, right? It's just, for me, it was, I got to get out and walk my dog.
Yeah.
That was the immediate sort of, it's the small goals that you can do, and then you start building confidence back again. And so at Selection, it's the same thing. I mean, war, business, love, life, this is all the same. It's just, it manifests differently. And so at Selection or anything that's really physically grueling, I mean, yeah, so what? You got 2 cadre telling you don't meet the standard. It's like, if I was a participant, I'm thinking in my head, I'd say, then get rid of me.
Yeah.
Tell me I'm done.
Yeah.
But if you're not going to tell me I'm done, then I'm not going to quit ever.
Yeah.
And so that's the mindset that you have to have.
So people do make it out of that early, you're not doing as well.
Plenty of people make it out. I mean, we just see about a 2% pass rate on that event.
Yeah.
I mean, one year we had, I think, 286 people sign up for it, and I don't know, maybe 100 people showed up, because a lot of people like to say they've signed up and then they don't show up. So
somebody we both know, we won't name him. I love the guy, but when you first announced Selection as an event, he bought a 5-pack.
Joel Gatt.
Yeah, God, you did it. Sorry, Joel, I wasn't going to.
Yep. Oh, I'm definitely gonna do that. Yeah, I think he's still got 4 waiting for him. and so yeah, I mean, that's the trick though. You just focus on the immediate and do one thing right. Yeah. And eventually it'll pass. This too shall pass.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's again, that's sort of an event that people point to and that people follow religiously, but it's not. It's sort of like a aspirational beacon in the community, but it's not the way most people.
Yeah, we
live.
run 1,000 events a year.
Right.
We run Selection once a year.
Yeah. So let's talk about the other 1,000, because what you've done is really special, and it's something that a lot of small business owners and large business owners aspire to do, which is to have this, an iconic. I mean, you're right at that place where you're becoming an iconic brand. You have people getting your logo tattooed. I was joking right before we started taping here that nobody's ever gotten my company's name tattooed on them.
Not even you?
Yeah, exactly. Maybe I should start there. So what are some of the things that you would say, and I'm sure there's things that you've done that you're like, oh, we shouldn't do that, or we should do less of that, and other things that you'd be like, okay, we should do more of that. What are things you've done that you find are good things to build this kind of sense of community? Other than, I guess, there's a essential aspect of putting people through really difficult things together, right? Which tends to build camaraderie.
Yeah, I mean, it's not an accident that this has happened, right? I mean, what I owe is the guys in Special Forces who trained me to be able to want to live up to that way of life every day for the rest of my life. I want to live up to the way of life that I experienced by serving with them. And just the way that you do business, so to say, in Special Forces is that you provide a lot of value to other people. To the guy to your left and the guy to your right, sure, but also in training other people in foreign cultures and all of that stuff. And so, I mean, this just came naturally to me. I mean, other things have not come naturally, but this just came naturally, this idea of being a part of a community. And I mean, I wanted that as well, personally. This GoRuck is the bridge in my life between the military and the civilian worlds, right? It's my answer to all the naysayers out there who say that it's a bridge too far, the military and the civilian worlds. It's just these are the things that tear apart the fabric of our society when we just let those go unchecked. When too many people are out there and say, well, only whatever 1% of the population has ever served, or take your pick, right? I mean, these are very negative things that are not part of the solution. And so at a very personal level, I mean, I wasn't thinking about answering all of that in the early stages of GoRuck. I just wanted to be a part of something bigger than myself.
Okay.
And so that's the foundational part of it. I mean, if you want to go out and start a widget company and try to sell widgets, I mean, that's not necessarily a community building thing unless you've got something that makes it a community building thing. And
Okay. So let's talk about that. What are the things that you doubled on and that you like focused on to help build this into a community?
I mean, I focused a lot more on the events, time with people. That there's no substitute. Presence implies interest, and you can don't judge someone by what they sort of say, or you don't know where someone's priorities lie by what they say. Look at their bank account and their calendar.
Right.
And for me, it was, I mean, man, I pounded a lot of pavement, and so did all of our cadre. You know, every weekend more events, just everywhere, and that led to. I mean, this is just the Special Forces model. You just have these local chapters, these local clubs around where you go. You build them up. I mean, Fight Club is also a pretty good kind of reference point, at least, right? Because all GoRuck, it becomes local at a certain point. When you've got a community, I mean, online communities aren't worth as much as real world communities. It's kind of like an online family isn't worth as much as your family that you live in your home with.
Sure.
You know, I mean, it's just not. And so to make something relevant in someone's life, you have to impact their life. I mean, it sounds so basic, you know, and the more you're able to do that with greater frequency, then the more that they're going to look to this umbrella of your organization or whatever you're doing as the responsible party that has provided this value to them. You know, I still, so many people have said, you know, hey, I don't do 2 events a month like I used to in the early days of GoRuck, you know, participant ABCD. But I met so many lifelong best friends through GoRuck. That makes me just, I couldn't be happier when I hear that kind of stuff. Because, I mean, look.
I'm still friends to this day with people I met in the GoRuck events, actually here in Austin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and we're not really going to regret the time in life where, you know, we left work a little bit early and went and did something outside with a buddy, right? In the real world. We might regret, you know, spending a little bit too much time on our phones. We might regret saying no to too many sort of invitations and stuff like that. But, you know, bringing people together and letting them enrich each other's lives, that's been the formula.
Okay. So if I were to take away like an actionable tip for small business people or managers, owners from that would be that to build that community, but focus maybe because you do have a very active Facebook group. So it's not like you don't do anything online.
Yeah, we take Facebook friends and make them into real friends, though.
Okay.
Right. I mean, there's an outlet for that. So a tangible, tactical, you know, hey, here's a takeaway is, you know, do something in the real world that will enrich someone's life, right? Bring people together and make your company an epicenter or a facilitator or whatever the case may be. I mean, you know, you've got whatever kind of company you are, you're not limited by anything but your own imagination. You can always, you know, hire a band to come to your whatever offices you have and invite more people. Yep. You can strengthen the community that you have of people that work for you at your work by doing more things with them. Right. You know, there's lots of different ways to do it. I mean, I don't have the kind of universal, hey, this is the silver bullet, but really you just have to focus on people. If you want to build a community of what? A community of people. Well, guess what? You have to focus on people then if you want to build a community of people.
Yeah. What are some pitfalls? So I know that I've seen...
If you're fake,
okay.
If you're trying too hard, right? I mean, if you don't really care and you're just trying to get to the point where someone buys something. Mm-hmm. People are smart. People are really smart. They can sniff that stuff out a mile away. And it's really hard to fake, you know? It's really hard to fake because we're not talking about just a transaction. We're talking about how people feel.
Right.
People, even when they can't express it, they know how they felt about their time with you, their time with your company. I mean, they can sense it, and that drives them to either do more of it or to cease.
Mm-hmm. Now, I remember there was a period in the Facebook group. So the Facebook group, you have to have completed some sort of event in order to be a part of.
Correct.
And there was a period where there was some upheaval and some issues where there had to be some moderating. So what are some of the things you saw there that you had to create rules around in order to keep this positive kind of uplifting sense of community and not let it degrade into something?
Yeah, I mean, Facebook's a tricky thing. I mean, people will say things online that they would never say to someone face to face, right? Become keyboard warriors and all that stuff. I mean, ultimately what I've found is that the only thing that works is delete the post, ban the user in that sort of sequence. I mean,
how do you determine where the line is where you would do that?
Moral compass?
Yeah.
I mean, if something is
you?
inflammatory, I mean, I spend a fair amount of time on there. We do have a community manager. I mean, stuff like that, and a lot of people have access as moderators that can delete a post or whatever. I mean, sometimes people just aren't as funny as they think they are online, or it doesn't translate as well as they think it should translate.
Yeah, what would make your friends laugh at 3 a.m. after half a bottle of bourbon may not make an entire.
Yeah, it makes you look like a total dick or something, right? And it rubs people the wrong way, and it's just, it's sort of, there's the silent majority that doesn't really speak up and call something out like that. They just leave. Right. And so you have to uphold a certain degree of standards without just becoming like a strip mall brand that stands for nothing. I mean, there's got to be some entertainment in this as well.
Oh, there's plenty of entertainment. I recommend to our audience to do an event so you can see the entertainment here.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, you just got to, there's no kind of, hey, this is exactly what it is. But if it's generally just negative, people don't want to be around that.
Yeah.
I mean, but you also don't want to be around the person that's every day quoting the new positivity quote, and it gets a little bit old too.
Yeah.
So there's a middle ground, and most of people are pretty real when it boils down to it. People want to go out, they want to have a good time with their friends, they want to do awesome stuff in a short life, they want to they love their family, they want their kids to grow up in a better world than they got. All these things are really universal, and so just forming a community of people. My point is that most or all of us share so many of those sentiments that it's really easy to find common ground. It's also pretty easy, especially online, to let the train can get off the tracks pretty quick too, though.
That's true. What's your vision for this? So what do you want to do? I know the last time we spoke, you talked about you wanted rucking to become an activity akin to, say, running in people's minds, right?
Yeah, it's going to happen. So rucking will it's a new fitness category. The thing is that people have been doing this forever. I mean, put weight on your back and go move. I mean, obviously, in militaries have been doing this for a really long time. I mean, the Romans, right? Well, first off, Homo sapiens said, man, my shoulders and back are a little bit better for moving weight than my biceps. I think I'll try to figure out a way to do that. Oh, by the way, then I can keep my spear in my hand so I can go hunt and find food for my family. So that was a real smart thing that Homo sapiens did, right?
Good job, guys.
Yeah, good job, guys. Thanks. And then militaries, specifically the Roman army, I mean, they had to move a lot of people with, a lot of stuff with them to go fight wherever it was in the Roman Empire. So they put weight on their backs, and the soldiers got to move it themselves, right? It's a lot more realistic than having a horse for everyone, So then this is just continued time and time and time again, to the point where now you've got this sort of special forces avatar for human performance is right now. I mean, it's not, the world's best athletes and all of that stuff. They exist in special forces. The most adaptable, highest levels of human performance exist in that universe. And so what we're doing is we're taking the training and the mindset and saying this is a way of life. And rucking is factually the foundation of special forces training. You have a rucksack with weight in it, and you have to go from point A to point B to point C to point D, and you have to do it within a certain period of time.
Right.
And so the reason why that's the foundation, at least in part, is because that's what the missions are. You have weight, you have to carry it, you have to move. oh, by the way, all of us in our daily lives, when we travel, we have stuff, we have to move. You know, I mean, these are universal things that human beings face, the need to move weight over distance. And you can get better at it. And you can get better at it by rucking. And you can do it with the person next to you. And you can get a lot out of it.
Okay. And you can, I mean, and something that is not limited, like any age, any, you don't have to be in special forces shape to say.
The weight is the great equalizer, right? Yeah. So if you start with 20 pounds, I mean, people can do 20 pounds, right? It sort of optimizes your time in your life because, I mean, time and love, the two things you can't buy, right? And so when we say, but we want to be healthier, you know, we want to be more active, we want to move more. Well, guess what? If you go walk the dog, you can ruck the dog. You'll just get more out of it. You can build a little muscle.
Yeah, I've done
burn
that.
a little bit.
Yeah.
You burn some more calories. You'll feel more tired, which is a good thing. The human body will sleep better.
Yeah.
You know, all of that kind of stuff. And so, you know, why do I think that this is going to be so successful as a thing? I mean, look, in 1967, Bill Bowerman, the co-founder of Nike, wrote a book called Jogging. And it was sort of one of those things that ignited the jogging revolution and all that stuff. I mean, what I would say is, has it worked?
Yeah.
I mean, are we?
When is the rucking book coming
Are we
out?
fitter? Are people? You know, is jogging work, or do we say, hey, running sucks? It was punishment in high school sports every time. If you mess up, they say, okay, go run, right? Because it sucks. Everybody knows.
But people are probably fitter in some ways.
In average, no. Look at waistlines.
Oh,
I mean, look at the average waistline in America. It's just gone way up.
Okay,
sure. I mean, you know, you've got significant amounts of knee injuries coming out of running. And look, I like to run. My wife ran in college. You know, I get it. It's the high that you get from running is fun, right? However, you pay a price for that. And what we see is that in aggregate, most people end up not wanting to run because it just sucks. It goes back to that sort of comfort thing. And so, you know, the rucking as the alternative, it's simple, it's easy to do. You can do it anywhere. And the barrier to entry physically is you can scale it up, you know.
By adding more weight.
Yeah, by adding, if you get good at it, you got 20 pounds, great, try 30.
Yeah.
You get good at 30. I mean, I max out at about 50 now.
Yeah.
And that's a really good workout for me.
Yeah, for sure. And when is the rucking book coming out?
Yeah, so I have first draft. It's about 45,000 pages, 45,000 words.
Yeah.
And it needs to be, you know, along the lines of double that at least. So
is that right? Oh.
Yeah, it needs to be more like
60 for mine.
more like 100,000 is sort of the advice that I got from some guys.
Right?
And so what kind of went back to is it's focused on the special forces training that I went through, and then there's also a couple other guys who are special forces guys who are sharing their stories of sort of human performance and the evolution of rucking. So there's an old school special forces guy who was in Vietnam and, you know, all just for the next 30 years in special forces. And so talking about the evolution of how we're training our special forces guys. And then there's another one of our cadre actually, who's sharing his story as sort of the modern day take on how special forces guys are training. And rucking remains the foundation of special forces training for good reason. And we're just getting smarter.
Okay.
The special forces community is just getting smarter. I mean, there's more emphasis on, you know, recovery, active recovery, diet, all of that kind of stuff. And yet the fundamental thing that you have to be able to do is move weight on your back.
Okay. And you've also added more events that are not necessarily related to rucking. So you have firearms days. What other things are you doing? You have a water event.
Right. So we have a survival series. That's this goes back to the sort of special forces mindset. You know, it's interestingly enough, the one event we have called Constellation, it kind of reminds me of what the initial vision of GoRuck was to teach people how to be more prepared, to have a go bag and a bug out bag and stuff like that. We just make an event into it. So what would happen? What would you do if, you know, natural disaster reigned, or there was, you know, what happens when the grid goes out, you know? And these are really kind of, you will see these things flare up from time to time.
It just happened in Houston.
Yeah. It just happened. And so, you know, are you ready? Not only from a standpoint of, hey, I'm trying to scare you into buying more stuff. It's not, that's that's not the goal. It's, you don't want to have never thought about what you'll do for the first time while you have to do it, right? You want to go through some type of mental preparation to say, I know how I'm going to behave and what I'm going to do for myself and for my family if something goes wrong in the universe.
Yeah, at Atomic Athlete, where I trained, we were talking about earlier, talk about like, what do you do when nobody's coming? You know, like, because you're used to calling for help.
Yeah, what happens when 911's down?
Yeah.
That's not a thing.
Yeah.
You know, and you could say, well, that might not last for very long or whatever, but
you don't know.
You don't know. So there's that, and then there's the water-based sort of similar theme. There's some med classes as well, and there's sort of, it all goes back to pushing people past their limits though as well, right? Making them a little uncomfortable in different ways. Not always super physical. Sometimes it's a little bit more mental. Yeah. And we're still doing, navigators and ascents, so mountains and cross-country stuff.
And 10 years from now, what else is going to be a part of this?
We're kind of, the event side just, it has to just evolve, right? I mean, it just has to. And so that comes from our cadre. We have guys who are recently retired. We have guys who are still in, and it's always starts with an idea for, hey, this would be cool to do this thing in this place. And then that leads to a whole series or something. And those series end up evolving. So, I can't predict what the future looks like there, but I mean, the challenge will remain the challenge. It's done really well from the standpoint of, we've got our technique down. We know how to do it. It works every time. Yeah. And it's integral to our DNA at GoRuck. So that physical element will remain. In 10 years, I see a lot more emphasis on the training side as it relates to rucking. I mean, I think we're going to be the rucking company. So every day we do things to own the high ground on rucking. And that's awesome. That's from the education standpoint, teaching people how to do it. It's also from building a business around it. So, the things that we offer are perfect for rucking. So apparel, rucks, we have footwear coming out later this year.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. So there's lots of different components. To
answer the most popular question in the GoRuck forum, which is, what shoes should I wear to that event?
Which boots? Well, guess what? That question has been answered now.
Got it. Love it. Before we wrap up, can you think of a time when things went really, really wrong, and what did you do about it? And I know there's one instance that you've told me about before when you had some cash flow issues. I don't know if you want to share that particular story. 2013,
I was kind of the bright-eyed, and still very much am, bright-eyed, a little bit naive, think we can just sort of, conquer the world, entrepreneur style. And I learned pretty hard that you still got to focus on the fundamentals. Mm-hmm. And the fundamentals in business are, cash and inventory for us, and payroll, and, all sorts of cost stuff. So in 2013, it just turned out, we just had not enough inventory, too many people on staff, and I had to fix it fast. I mean, I finally got a report. I wasn't actually running the business. I was just kind of chasing the next thing, and I was out promoting and running a lot of events, and kind of thought that, I can solve all of our problems this way. I'll just sort of engage the people and everything will be okay. And so finally got a report, financial report, which back then I really did not enjoy looking at. I still don't love looking at them all that much, but I do it every single day. Yeah. Welcome to life. You have to do some stuff you don't love. Yep. And so I had to lay off, I think, a third of the company or something. And the report came in on a Friday, and Monday was a really bad day. Oh, so yeah. And it just that was not fun, because those were friends, and it's just kind of hard, And so the thing is that I learned a lot in that process.
And then you had to liquidate some inventory too, right?
Yeah, and then we ran our first sort of sale. I mean, it was one of the few times GR1 has been on discount. We don't really discount that one all that much, if ever. I don't think we discounted it at all this year. And so, yeah, GR1 was this is 2013. GR1 was on a big discount, and we had to turn bags into cash and to pay bills and vendors. I mean, the man needs his rent check no matter what. Yep. No matter how great you're doing for the world, the man needs his rent check.
He doesn't care how cool your event was last night.
No, he definitely doesn't care. He wasn't there, and he doesn't care. Yeah. And so it's one of those things that I think about that a lot, because I don't want to do it again. Yep. And if GoRuck, and I believe it will, outlives me and, becomes this sort of iconic American brand. I mean, it will happen again at some point, because the new challenge, it just gets bigger. You have more zeros behind it.
Yeah, and the entropy and the chaos only increases geometrically with the number of people, right? So you have more issues.
Yeah. But, it'll happen again, I'm sure, somewhere down the line. And I don't want to live my life in kind of fear of not having to do something, because I mean, that was the product of trying a lot of new things, and they just kind of didn't work out. And so, so then we didn't have enough cash, and we had to do something about it. And, so I don't want to live a life where we're not being aggressive and trying new things. But I think we've gotten better, at least for the stage where we are now, so that we're not, we know how we stand, and we can forecast sooner what potential pitfalls would be.
Awesome. I would ask you what your number one lesson would be for other small business owners, but you've shared so many. I don't know, unless there's one that pops to mind that you haven't. I mean, you've had some great, nuggets of wisdom. I mean,
I think
that's kind of our staple question here in the show. But
the universal answer is that there's no shortcuts.
Yeah,
it's if it doesn't take a year, it's probably not worth doing.
Yeah,
right. And it's just, do less and do it really well. I mean, we've sort of talked about a lot of these, but it's a lot of hard work, and you've got to stay really focused.
Yeah. Learn how to rest, not quit. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome.
Or rest if you absolutely have to, but you're not going to get a lot of it in the early days.
That's true. Very true. Where can people find you? So is it GoRuck.com?
It's GoRuck.com.
And are you on Twitter and Instagram, social media?
Yeah, we do all that stuff.
Stuff.
It's obligatory these days.
Yeah. And if people want to sign up for an event, they can find that.
It's on the events tab on the website.
And you have events worldwide now, right? It's not just in the U.S.
Yeah, we're worldwide. It's global.
That's awesome. Well, Jason McCarthy, incredibly inspirational story. I really appreciate you
Thanks so much,
by
man.
And chatting.
Yep.
Good to see you, man.
Cool. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to Small Business War Stories. If you enjoy the show, share it with a friend, or you can subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, or on our blog at blog.proven.com. If you have an idea for us, we'd love to hear it. Please email us at podcast@proven.com. See you next time. Small Business War Stories. Small businesses are the soul of America. And this is where they tell their stories. I am your host, Pablo Fuentes.